Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Rutledge and Dave Forrester with you as ever to go back over all the action in the British Basketball League this week. Let's start with the Euro Cup game from Wembley on Tuesday night. The London Lions were beaten 78-87 by Buducnost VOLI Podgorica. They had Decker back and they had him straight into the lineup, but with Trey Bell Haynes hitting from behind the arc and Alpha Kaba inside, Lions were 23-9 down after 6 minutes.
Yeah, I don't like Wembley. I never won a game there. Two finals.
It looked weird. It looked weird because there was no seating behind the benches. Traditionally, there was always been seating there, and you could see those doors, which were normally down a set of steps. Just threw me.
It was always weird because the seats there's an enormous amount of seats behind the basket going flat.
Yeah.
And they never suited us. We lost 2 games there. Didn't score 70 in each game, I don't think, in both finals. But it's always kind of a little bit back in time. Watching games at Wembley. They got basically, they ran a clinic on them in the first half, in the first quarter. It's Decker's first game back. So you expect a little bit of adjustment, if I can put it that way. But their Achilles heel, their defense, their 3-point defense in particular, as you say, Bell Haynes in particular, I think it's Canadian, because I was reading it a little bit. He's in the Canadian national team kind of long squad. Indeed, so is Aaron Best, so they'll be playing with each other. But the guard disparity between the teams, I thought, was substantial, and they got whatever they wanted, and that created space, which allowed the big guys to go to work inside. And until the scoreboard was, when the scoreboard went down, that kind of helped London break the rhythm a little bit. But I just thought it was a clinic.
And once they got behind that, it was pretty much that. I mean, he did find a lineup in the fourth quarter where they managed to get it. Late third quarter, early fourth quarter, they managed to get it down to 7, but Bell Haynes always made a shot when they needed it, and they always looked like they were going to win Buducnost.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tuesday. I feel like there's 100 games happened since, which is a problem with Tuesday games. And you're right, he did get to that lineup, and I'm trying to remember who it was, to be honest.
Well, it didn't include Soko, and it was one of those things where I was like, oh, why is Soko not come back on? But actually, in the interview before the game tonight in Bristol tonight, Coach Schmidt said he had a back issue, and that's why he didn't play the end of that game.
Well, but also I thought the lineup made a run, didn't they? And I hope it was Zucic and Fruban and Sharma, if my memory is absolute. I think Sharma played a lot in that game, and that gave them, a little bit more stretch than Soko does as well. But Soko's kind of been their battering ram in Europe, in particular. He has mismatches. And he started off aggressively in the first quarter. He was the only one basically being aggressive in the first quarter as well. But with the group that they've got, though, and Best came in and Best played well in the fourth quarter and made some plays to try and drag them back into the game. But with the group that they've got, they have to unlock Nelson. If they don't unlock Nelson, I don't see them winning many games. And at the moment, he is still betwixt and between. He's a point guard. He's playing the point guard slot, and him and Best are kind of sharing it. But neither of them, I don't think, would identify as a pure point guard. And it still kind of blows my mind that they haven't got. They've got 5 import slots, and they've got God knows how much money and the opportunity to sign extra one for Europe if they want. And that they haven't gone and found themselves a high-level Euro Cup floor general, because I don't think Luke Nelson is looking at all the talent around him, and he's by definition he's having to try to be a facilitator, and yet he has been at his best, even when we've seen with the GB team, as a combo guard, as a scorer who can handle, and I think that leads to and even Aaron Best is kind of the same. He's an attack guard, And I just see it as a problem for them, because you look at what every team they've played so far has had 2 of them. Guys who can make shots, facilitate, get in the lane, run the screen and roll. And London's screen and roll stuff is still outside of the pitch back to Zubcic for the 3, outside the pick and pop for 3, the screen and roll stuff, it still doesn't run, it's not smooth. It's not as smooth as the other teams that they're playing against. So they're going to get in games on the basis of their athleticism. They're going to get in games on the basis of their energy, and they're going to get in games on the basis that they do play hard and they do have a lot of size. But when it comes down to it, you have to make it's decisions. Decisions win games, and they didn't start with anything in the first quarter, and then by the time they kind of made the run, which the other team was always going to kind of ease up a little bit, miss some shots. The decisions weren't quite that made well enough early enough to get them going. But I thought Sharma played well. I remember back now that Sharma played very, very well, and he basically he played instead of Kufos in the fourth quarter, and that gave them something. But I think that they need to rebalance just a little bit, not a lot, but there needs to be rebalancing, and they probably need a high level guard.
They have a 2-week break now in Eurocup for the international window, and then they come back with I think it's Hamburg away and then Schlask at home. So two winnable games, but they'll need to win both of them just to give them a bit of momentum in the right direction. Best 15, Decker 15, 5 and 6. Soko with 13 points, as I say, didn't play the last 16 minutes. And the way it was phrased, I can't remember the exact sentence, but the way it was phrased didn't fill me with positivity that he'd be available for Great Britain next week. Bell Haynes, Bell Haynes 21, 4 of 6 from 3-point range. Kaba was 7 of 11 shooting for 16 points, and Aaron White 4 of 5 for 15 points. They shot 57% from the floor and 43% from 3-point range. Buducnost.
It's that 3-point number, I don't know what London are giving up all season. We'll do a check-in on them in a couple of weeks when they've played enough games. But what they're giving up from the 3-point line in Europe isn't great. It isn't conducive to winning. I would be amazed if it's under 40% three that they're giving up, and it's tough to win that way. Yeah,
it is. Let's go to Friday night. Bristol Flyers 89, Caledonia Gladiators 79. No Bell with a hip injury for the Flyers. Fraser was on the list but didn't play. 7-6 after 5 minutes, and then Ollison, Mahan, Samuels all hit threes. 14 points in a row for Bristol, and they're 21-6 up and cruising.
Yeah, it's deja vu this, because not in relation to the game itself, but in relation to Caledonia. They previously played a game at Cheshire where they basically couldn't score the ball in the first quarter, put out the blocks at all. And they didn't get any offensive rebounds, and their actions weren't smooth, and it's just a lot of okay, we just got off the bus type thing. But of course, that was a Cheshire team that they'd beaten by 20 in pre-season. This week they go down to Bristol, a team that they beat by 20 last week. So I'm a massive believer that this stuff is always mental. It's not physical. Always mental. There's times you might need a little bit of time to shake yourself out of the bus and all that stuff. But the mentality in relation to the players that you're making, you can always see when a team is on it, and they weren't. And again, deja vu. Sloan played 4 minutes and sat down for the next 5. And they, I think, had probably 10 points halfway through the second quarter or something.
Yeah, 14. It was 38-14 midway through the second quarter.
And they got basically, you would describe it as being jumped on by a Bristol team that was hungry because they hadn't played very well when they got beat by them last week. And Bristol, in the meantime, or actually, I'm delighted to say, proving A. Forrester truism true, in that, every BBL team, can survive and can often even improve their performances if they lose one player. But when they lose 2, it becomes a problem. 1 tends to help the rotation. Everybody else has to do a little bit more. Coaches can cover. But when you lose 2, then suddenly you're getting deeper into your rotations and it's harder to cover. And, so they had Miller back, even though he wasn't particularly effective in this game. And obviously Bell wasn't. They did what they've been doing in Bristol. They made kind of shots. They played relentlessly. They rebounded the ball at both ends. and they jumped on Glasgow. And Caledonia, sorry. And Caledonia's, I mean, we'll get onto them in a minute when we go through the rest of this game, but they've got some interesting stuff going on at the moment, which I'll talk about as we get through this game. They're doing some travel, obviously, Bristol, Plymouth last weekend. And back to Bristol this Friday. I mean, I think I might have shot whoever put that together. I think there'd be that, just so people, when the league when the fixtures are done before the season, there's generally a week or a 2-week window whereby you get the draft fixtures and the teams can actually comment on them and say, well, what about this or what about that? And see if they can kind of barter an adjustment or anything like that. The basic rule, I think, is that only home teams can shift games.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you can kind of find a way around of making it better for everybody, because coaches don't really like to be playing the same team twice in a row.
No, they don't.
They don't. It's just, it brings in too many extra imponderables into a sport full of them. Because you're dealing with what happened, you're dealing with, fallout of people remembering each other, etc. And so I think Glasgow might have been trying to get that one shifted a bit later in the season and maybe done a swap with somebody, but they couldn't. And they end up going back down there, lots of travel, having come off a 20-point win. Really, we should have seen it coming.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, it was only when Bristol's offense slowed down a little bit in the fourth quarter that they even got it down to 8. But even at that point, Miller and Watson Grail hit some threes, and that was that.
Yeah, this is where it got interesting with Caledonia, because there's a tremendous amount of kind of little push me, pull you going on between Murray and Sloan at the minute, between Gareth and David Sloan, right? As David Sloan is scarily talented. He can score the ball. He's quick. He can make he can shoot well enough to keep defenses honest. We've talked about what he's like in drop coverage, but he can also attack the rim. He can finish in a number of different ways, both hands. He makes some highlight plays, right? And there was a point in this game whereby, the Caledonia were down 20, and he basically attacked the rim and shot the ball about every possession in a row for about 10. Really, and you'll see, we'll talk about the usage numbers at the end. And they needed a scorer because they're down 20, and your teams need scoring and fancy ways of scoring. We need scoring. But there's an impact on that when that person is your point guard. So there's an impact which runs through the rest of the group as well.
Yeah.
At the end of this game, he had 24 shot attempts, 12 foul shots. So that's probably 6 or 7 more. If you had round one, 6 or 7 more shot attempts.
Yeah.
And 2 assists. Right now, you've got a point guard who's shooting the ball basically 30 times.
Yeah.
Your 2 assists. That is the antithesis of Gareth Murray's coaching. That's not what Gareth is.
Yeah.
Gareth moved the ball. He knows he wants teams to play it the right way, right? And I'm not saying David Sloan is playing it the wrong way, because he's doing what he can to get his basketball team back into it. But it isn't just, it's October at the moment, right? When it gets to January, if your point guard's averaging 25 shots and 2 assists, everybody else on the team is going to be, to use a phrase, frustrated.
Yeah.
I can think of another word or two that may be
miffed.
Miffed. Yeah, miffed. Well, it's the right word construction with a double letter in the middle. Yeah. Because you can't survive that way with the group, and there's nothing to suggest that he's not a good teammate. I'm not suggesting anything of that nature, but Gareth's aware of the balance, which is why when they've not started off properly, he's kind of pulled him a little bit, pulled him up and sat him down for a little bit. He also runs a lot more. He also kind of moves him to the 2 spots. So he has Adams bringing the basketball. It runs him off the ball, so because it's easier then to be a scorer if you're not the one with the basketball. But there are times when he shoots early shots, and you see it. You see it in Gareth. He's not happy, especially Bristol and Cheshire where we've been tonight, where the cameras see the coaches as
Yeah.
Your coaches are right in front of you, so you see every reflection. And I thought in this game he dragged them back to a certain degree. Onwas was exceptional. He was the second guy who dragged them back. because Bristol aren't going to keep making threes, and for all their shooting prowess at home, I don't think they certainly haven't scored 100 this season. I'm not even sure they've got up to 90 in a game this season. They might have maybe once or twice. So, if you're in the 80s, you've got a good chance of beating Bristol, even there. But it's tough to be in the 80s when you've got 14 after 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Onwas as well. Very impressed with him. If there was one BBL player to qualify for a character on Game of Thrones, I think it would be him. Just the ponytail, the shirt that's slightly too small, which means the muscles are popping. The look in his eye, he's always playing. He's always got that look in his eye. He's just, I can see him with the smoke, with the dry ice behind him coming out with a glen. And I haven't watched Game of Thrones. I'm just making this rubbish. With the sword in his hand, ready to chop somebody's head off, and I think I'd be running the other way. He really, I thought, he plays without the ball as well.
Yeah, he does.
Plays without the ball, that makes a difference, which you need in that team. Whereas, Sloan's numbers going up, but Adam's numbers are going down a little bit. Bailey's numbers going down a little bit. So they've got things to kind of figure and ponder. We'll talk a bit about that Cheshire game later. Bristol, I think it's an incredible transformation. Not this year, but from where they were. I've talked about it before. It's like they've gone from Last of the Summer Wine to Fast and the Furious. They used to run every system run known to man. There's spread, you run there, you do this. And now basically they got guys who are just attacking, and they're attacking relentlessly, and they're skilled enough to do it, and they're attacking in such a way that they're not selfish about it. So they're still penetrating and kicking it out. It's not just a question of just penetrate and throw up any rubbish you can. They're getting good threes off their kick outs. And Watson Gale may be the pickup of the year at this point, because obviously he's a British kid. He's come out of a Division 2 college, so he's he's not highly touted, albeit anybody who averages 90 in a game at any NCAA levels pretty good. But his mentality, he's even the game today we'll talk about, when he's guarding Nelson and people like that, he's not scared of anything. And has a real understanding of what his game is. And to be fair, and this is where I give Andreas a lot of credit, he's not getting in their way.
He's not. No,
these guys are just going, and it's encouraging. It's a constant encouragement, and they play hard, and they come out, and the next bunch comes in, and they just keep going. And it's not if you shoot a bad shot, you're not getting you're not getting dragged out of the game or anything like that. He's got a real handle on that group, I think, which is why they've had success early on. Credit to them for coming back. I mean, it was a bounce back game. They really always should win that, particularly with Miller back after what happened last week. But to come out and be 34-10 up after 14 minutes, I think was an impressive statement.
Mahan led the way with 19 points, 5 of 8 from 3-point range. Ollison had 18, King 16, 10 and 5. I've no idea how they won the game with only 9 offensive rebounds. Rowe keeps telling me all these offensive rebounds. Oh, wait, no, they shot 56% from the floor and 15 of 29 from 3. So making the first shot is more important than these offensive rebounds.
15 of 29 from 3 will get it when the opposition makes 4. So if you've got a 33-point differential in 3-point shooting, then that's a variance in
it was 4 of 24 for comparison. Caledonia, and they were 36% from the floor in total.
We'll see it. Go on.
I was just going to say Sloan had 37. You mentioned he was 12 of 24, and almost 15 and 8.
37 and 2 assists, and as I say, there's a point guard shooting the ball 30 times. That's something which can cause issues down the line, even if he's making every play under the sun. Something else I was going to say. We need to have a check on Mahan and his home away shooting splits over the season, because he seems to like the friendly confines of the SPSY's arena, albeit I use the word arena wisely. Yeah, but it's
it did strike me watching today. I was wondering whether the likes of Decker or Kufos have ever quite played in a gym like that before.
Probably not since high school.
No.
Decker certainly not since high school.
Yeah.
Because even if you look at it, they've been at Pons Forge, but Pons Forge is, it's one-sided, but it's scope a little bit, it's a little bit more. Even so, they played at Surrey, but Surrey, Surrey's got a nice leafy feel to it and plenty of seats. But Bristol is different. Bristol and Plymouth are different. There's travel and it's also environment. And I did think that too. No, they're using it. They're using it. Give them credit. Use it. Use everything.
The only problem is, I think they've played their entire home program already, haven't they? They seem to be playing
seven home games, maybe.
Yeah, they've played a lot of home games. Yeah.
But that's a great win. So if it was win what's in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the Sky Sports game. We were both at the Virtue Motors Arena on Friday. Newcastle Eagles 74, Surrey Scorchers 79, first win of the season for Surrey. Ryan Martin was in for Surrey. Kyle Johnson was also fit for Newcastle. Still no Ray or Steele for the Scorchers. Martin made an immediate impression, 7 points, and gave them an early 11-6 lead.
Yeah, I thought he does change. Him and Quincy Taylor significantly changed the face of that team because their experience, they can play, but their experience had been around, and Ryan Martin, came ready to play, and to be fair to him, he looked in excellent shape, which, given that he hasn't played in 7 months, 6-7 months, it's easy to come in and take 2 or 3 weeks just to work yourself. He looked ready to play. And I thought Newcastle's didn't follow the scouting report with him early. You can't let him go to his right. He's too big and long, and they let him go to his right at least twice. Then he got a pick and pop 3, which again is also on the scouting report. He got to close them out and send them left. And they just Surrey just looked sharper for this game. And obviously Newcastle coming off 108 points last week, so everybody feels good about themselves and thinks that this is the way we're going to be. And they didn't have the sharpness, I thought, in their execution early. I thought Hamlet struggled all night, even though he ended up with 20. His floater wasn't going. He just looked a little bit, well, we'll talk about it later, but he looked a little bit not discontented, but discombobulated probably. And they also were they had Kyle Carey and Luke Brazumbru, both guys who were 6'4" and athletic, guarding him the whole game, So then it said, well, who else is going to step up for Newcastle? Because, he's the guy who's scoring the ball more. And to be honest, early, really nobody.
Well, Kennedy and Everett made a couple of shots early on.
Kennedy made a 3 early, and he got a dunk off an inbounds pass. Didn't score for the rest of the game. Played 28 minutes, put up 2 shots for the rest of the game in those 25 minutes he played. Everett, I thought, looked really quite impressive, but didn't touch the ball enough. And I think going down, when he's got a few more games in, I think they'll be throwing the ball into him a lot more than they did in what they were running. And Surrey, I thought ran their stuff a little bit better than Newcastle did, but they didn't really make many shots, and that's why the game remained relatively close. And the other thing about Surrey, I must say, having seen them out in person, they may be the skinniest BBL team I've seen. And not all of them, because Quincy's obviously he's got some shoulders on him. But if you throw, and so is Luke Brazumbru, but if you throw Paddy at one, Kyle Carey, Charleston Dobbs, and there's somebody else who's playing proper minutes for them. Shaquem Johnson. Yeah, you throw those 4, you put those 4 on top of each other, lay them down flat on top of each other. I don't think they get to my knee. They really are. I mean, skinny is a word for athletic. So they're athletes. A basketball player like that, you're an athlete. Okay. Yeah, they've got a little bit more bulk in, with Jack Donmy and Quincy, etc. But and I thought they were locked in. I thought they were playing good defense. Both teams I thought had good defensive scouting plans, which kind of made for probably a less enthralling TV game, a less explosive TV game than you want.
Closer though, closer. It's better that than 106-80.
Yeah, I thought basically, Surrey had a plan on with Hamlet, and Newcastle basically showed up Bazumbru's lack of his jump shot, and those two things kind of balanced out. With kind of that made it harder for everybody. And it was only really when Defoe came back in the game, Newcastle were awful at the beginning until probably 2 or 3 minutes in the second quarter. Defoe comes back in the game, he makes a jump hook, he makes a jump shot, he runs a lane, he gets fouled, and he does his hamstring.
Yeah.
I assume it's his hamstring, I don't know.
It looked like a hamstring. Yeah.
And then he sat down for the rest of the game, and he's in the second half. And at that point, it was always going to be, I think it was going to be tough, because for whatever numbers show, whatever he is, when they were struggling in the at the beginning of the second quarter, he was the one who came back in the game and stepped up. So without him, it became a bit of a war of attrition for Newcastle, and to be fair, for Surrey as well.
Scorchers had the last 4 points of the first half, the first 4 of the second half to lead 31-42. That was short-lived though, coming with the 3 and Johnson and 1, and it was back down to 4. And then really it was Hamlet getting to the line, putting Eagles in the lead just before the end of the third quarter, and then it was going to be coming down to the last 2 minutes, which it did.
Yeah, that's right. I thought Hamlet was, I've seen him a few games now, and he wasn't comfortable with himself, and so he just basically put his head down and got to the rim and got fouled. When he's more confident in himself, he's pulling up and making those floaters and shoot, and he wasn't comfortable with that. The Eagles rotation, obviously Kyle Johnson basically didn't make a shot until the fourth quarter, but with Defoe being out, Shelton clearly in the doghouse, because he never showed up in the first half. Yeah. He clearly played 6 minutes in the first half. He was dominated by Jack Donnelly. Mockford played a few minutes in each half. I'm not sure if it's a health thing with him, but because Mark went to Kyle Johnson ahead of him, and Kyle Johnson's been there like a week and been injured, so yeah, and then when Everett fouled out as well, that left quite a deep team with really very few options at the end of the game. If you're not going to play Shelton or Mockford, and Defoe's not there, and Everett's fouled out. In the meantime, Surrey were racking up fouls as well, Carey and Bazumbru as well, and obviously Donovan Johnson was not shy for Newcastle either. And so it basically came down to a last 2 minutes execution. And
let's get there then. Wang put Surrey up 66-70. Carl Johnson then hit a 3 to make it 69-70. 1:45 to go. Hamlet to the basket. Carey commits his 5th foul. He makes both free throws at 71-71. Wang missed a 3. Johnson got a foul on the rebound, which was his 4th, which I didn't. It was one of them where I watched it a couple of times. I wasn't sure there was. I thought it was a good
call, because if you watch it on the first replay that you guys had from the sideline, not from the baseline, as the rebound kind of goes up, he hooks his arm. I don't think it was the push. If it was, I think the push was inconsequential. I thought on the rebound, rather than box him out, he arm locked him, and that's what I thought the ref called. I'd have called that if I saw that. It was an indisciplined play from my perspective. The ball's up in the air. You've got to box out properly and let somebody go and get it. And the last thing you want to be doing is giving the ref an opportunity to play. Just on this, Wang had been. It's an interesting thing because Carey had fouled out at this point, and Eagles were doing a pretty good job on Quincy. He'd made a few shots in the second quarter, but basically, he wasn't a primary threat. And Lloyd gave the ball to Paddy at Wang in the fourth quarter, and he ended up with Hamlet on him. And Hamlet's defense in the fourth quarter was awful. Wang was fine. Wang did what he was meant to do, and there's no criticism of that. But Hamlet wasn't in a stance. He wasn't locked into stopping the guy. Didn't know precisely how he was planning on stopping the guy. And the reason I say that is because Wang hadn't made a jump shot all night. He hadn't made any shot an air ball, maybe more than one. And if you look at the last 4 minutes of this game, and I only watched the last 5 minutes back because I wasn't really interested in watching the whole rest of it again. If you watch the last 4 minutes, Wang goes one gets to the rim three times on Hamlet, and there's just no connectivity. Even Martin, when Martin's got maybe Kyle Johnson in the post, Javion Hamlet's the help guy. He stood watching him. He's not in the stance. He doesn't go across and help. I thought he was, I thought his offensive woes were impacting his mental discipline defensively, and ultimately that's kind of where the game was won and lost. So it gets to that situation where who executes better in the game wins. Johnson makes a dumb foul. 2 foul shots. Did they make them?
Martin made 1 of 2, so it's 71-72 with 1:22 to go, and then they go the other way, and the 5th foul on Johnson on the screen, which I saw your tweet, and I saw your tweet. I think it was the next morning, and I was thinking, what foul was that? I don't remember it, so I went back and watched it, and at the time I was too distracted by his reaction because I thought he was going to get a technical. He probably deserved a technical for the reaction, but having then paid attention to the foul call, it was a touch harsh. You can see why he reacted as he did, because it looked like a good screen.
It's the last time something like that happened. It was in Liverpool Echo Arena in 2010. Me and Fab chased the refs off the court at the end. Not proud of that. But it was a halfway line screen call against against Tony G's Mersey Tigers, where Fab set a perfect screen for Trey Moore, and ref called his 5th foul. And if Fab had been in the building on that game, I don't think he'd have worried about him getting a technical. He's probably worried about your equipment being thrown against the wall. No, I mean, it's a tough one because I'm not interested in burying people and burying refs. It's not what this is all about. And always try and present both sides of it, and in many ways probably been a little bit more generous than some people think I should have been in relation to the proliferation of illegal screen calls this season and how that impacts things. And so it's a bit of an absolute nightmare for me, having kind of the very worst one being a significant deciding factor call in a game which my team is playing in, on TV.
Yeah. So you can watch it back and back and back.
Yeah. So and everybody else is watching it as well. So that kind of leaves me in a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'm pretty straightforward. I'd have tweeted that if it had been any team. Genuinely, it was a picture perfect screen. He absolutely, and just on the impact that the game has on that. And I don't know what the ref saw. Maybe he didn't see it happening, and he just saw the bodies on the floor, and they're kind of almost programmed into calling offensive fouls now. This is 8 weeks in now. We've heard about how many offensive fouls are being called. It is almost like that the first thought, if something like that happens, is it's an offensive foul. Now, what happened was it was a broken play because I think Kyle Johnson drove in, threw it out. Yeah,
it was a bad pass out.
Threw it out, which meant that suddenly Hamlet is coming on with speed, and instead of being a sideways on a flat screen, it's a back screen.
Yeah.
Johnson sees the opportunity to hit Buzumbru with a back screen. Now, Buzumbru, because he's herring out there and herring back, doesn't even look up. He just mows him. He hasn't even seen it coming. But because Buzumbru hasn't seen it coming, my guess is the ref's looking at the ball, not what's going on. And at the end of the play, he sees a body on the ground. It doesn't help that it's Johnson. It doesn't help that his hair's in a ponytail flying everywhere. And it doesn't help that they've been told to call X thousand offensive fouls. And you throw all of that together, and I'm afraid we get the call, which for the following reasons was pretty substantial. I would summarize it as, if it was a 50-50 game beforehand, which I think it was, it's a 1-point game where Newcastle have probably got 2 possessions and Leicester and Surrey have got 1. I think it was about 40 seconds to go.
105.
105. So maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe say it's a 50-50 game, 1-point game, that type of thing. I think because of the impact of that call, I think it became a 75-25 game to Surrey. And the reason I say that is because of what the impact it had. One, Johnson fouls out. Newcastle don't have another big they're going to use. So Kennedy has to now defend. Kennedy has now been in the screen and roll with 4 guards, and we'll talk about what happened on the next play in a minute. 2, Buzumbru doesn't foul out, because that should have been Buzumbru's 5th foul. That is an offense. That is defensive foul. You can't run over a legitimate screen, right? 3, that's 2 shots for Newcastle. The team, it's,
Yeah.
that's 2 shots. Presumably that foul's good. Say Johnson, who's a good foul shooter, makes 1, tie game, makes 2, they're up. Okay. So potentially if it goes to a 1-point game for Newcastle with a minute to go, maybe a tie game. Minute to go with Zumbru, Carey both fouled out of the game. So somebody else is having to come in and really, Surrey don't really have anybody else to play that position. So that's kind of gonna screw them up a little bit, whoever they have to bring back in. And Johnson is still in the game for Newcastle, where he'd been the primary screen and roll defender. So what happens the next play down, and this is kind of, again, Surrey run the ball reversal and they throw it back to Wang at the top. And again, this is on Hamlet because Hamlet wasn't in the stance. But Newcastle's screen and roll defense is totally off kilter because suddenly, instead of Johnson being the guy who's in the screen and roll, it's Kennedy. Kennedy hasn't done that the whole game. Hamlet doesn't know where Kennedy's meant to be. Kennedy doesn't know where Hamlet wants him to go. So Hamlet shows, basically, I say shows Wang to his left. I'm not sure he did much more than Kennedy let him pass, but didn't kind of fight over. And Kennedy is on the other side of the screen. And now Cohen sees that too late. Cohen makes the right play. He tries to come in from the corner to help out. Too late. And won. I don't think it was on the fouls on Cohen. It was on whoever it was. And that came about because the personnel had changed because Johnson had fouled out.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what's going to happen if Johnson doesn't foul out.
No.
I don't know. I mean, and I'm not. And overall in this game, Surrey were more together, and they were ultimately more disciplined down the stretch, even though they didn't shoot the ball very well. And I think it would be. I couldn't possibly begrudge them winning this game on what I saw. But it doesn't. It's not good. It's not good. You can't make that. You can't make that call. You can't be that wrong on that call. I'm afraid at that point in the game.
So,
overall, go on,
yeah, Wang Zhanwan makes it 71-75 with 48.4 seconds to go. Hamlet then misses with 30 seconds to go. Wang gets a rebound. They ran some clock. Eagles were a little slow to foul.
Yeah, it's about the 3rd time this season they've been a little bit slow to foul. They're I can say what I know. Mark's telling them to foul. I'm watching it, and sometimes I do have a little bit of wonder about some of the basketball IQs at times.
Martin makes 2 free throws, 22.7 seconds remaining, 77. And basically this game is over unless Newcastle can get a quick 3. Timeout, advance the ball. Carl Johnson, catch and shoot, makes a 3 with inside 3 seconds. And it's 74-77 with 20.1 seconds to go. And we debated it on air as to what to do in that situation, because obviously there's 20 seconds to go. You're up by a shot. If you take the ball in the backcourt, basically the shot clock is off, so you can run it to the buzzer. They're going to have to foul you. Obviously, there's risks, but you can run the baseline and stuff like that. If you advance the ball to the front court, there's enough of a differential, 6.1 seconds, that you can bait them into going, well, actually, we won't foul you here. We'll play some defense, get a stop, and then we'll have the ball with a chance to tie it. Of course, the risk of advancing the ball and doing that is if you miss, they could get the ball and go and tie it.
You never give the opponent a possession. If you've got the choice, you never give the opponent a possession. And that would give the opponent a possession. And I'm assuming, because I didn't notice it at the time, that he took it from the back court.
No, he moved it to the front court. He did exactly what I thought. Yeah, he baited them into playing. He moved it into the front court, and then there was a foul, and I couldn't work out why you would foul at that point. Because
Dan, at this point, I've no idea why, but I've totally missed that.
So it was on the inbound where they took like 4.9 seconds to inbound it, right, and the foul was called. And actually, my first reaction was that's an unsportsmanlike foul because the ball hadn't been passed in. But when I looked at the replay, I think he just let go of it as the infringement happened, so therefore it's a regular foul. So just to clear up, in case people don't know, any foul in the last 2 minutes before the pass has been made on a sideline or a baseline is automatically an unsportsmanlike foul. If it's out of the hands on the way to the player, then it's a regular foul.
Well, 2 things. One, some people might want to turn this off and find someone who knows what they're talking about, because I totally missed all of that when it was live, because I'm amazed that Lloyd advanced the basketball. I'm also amazed that Newcastle weren't smart enough not to foul.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and and yeah, I'm also amazed that I didn't realize any of that was going on. So yeah, I thought what I did remember thinking was I thought they got a bit fortunate with a 5-second call.
Yeah.
It was, it was kind of the fourth look.
Yeah.
Or normally,
Yeah.
as a coach, it was always if you didn't get the ball in on your third look, I'm looking at the referee.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the referee saying, how much longer, and they didn't. And yeah, I did pick up the point about I did wonder if they're going to call it on sports night, but no, I said that's not a good foul. Then not a foul. You've got a chance to defense, get they miss, and you've got 5 seconds to get down the court and shoot a pull up three.
The interesting thing is the clock started because 0.6 went off, and I'm not sure. I think the foul was before the ball got there, so I don't know how the clock started, but nobody picked up on that.
Yeah, well, it was kind of indicative of saying it wasn't an overly well played game. It was I don't think it was a badly coached game. I thought both teams had plans for the opposition. I don't think each of them was kind of good enough or determined enough to kind of figure out exactly what those plans were. And ultimately, as I say, the fact that Newcastle at the end of the game couldn't keep Wang from getting to the rim was the game. That was the game. And I put that down to not being locked in on defense. Not that they couldn't play defense, or not that Wang did anything special. He didn't make any particularly special moves, I also thought that, having complained about Sloan shooting 30 shots at Bristol, you've got Cohen who shot 4 shots in this game, 8 assists, but 4 shots, You've got Kennedy who's shooting 48% from 3, who shot 4 shots. So those two guys shot 8 shots in 60 minutes, and that's not going to get it done in a BBL. They're going to have to look for their own shots more often, because that's how a team scores 71 or 74 instead of 90. Against that, Kyle Johnson comes in, who knows his game, and obviously we've not seen Kyle in the league before, but he's a GB player. He's well thought of. Kyle knows his game. He's a scorer. He puts up 11 shots in 20 minutes because that's what he's there for. And those kind of things still have to be ironed out with Newcastle. They're still not there yet in relation to knowing each other and understanding each other. And understand, particularly as I say, two of the starting 5, Cohen and Kennedy, are probably more used to being facilitators, and someone's got to score. So I'm not. They had 14 assists between them, so it wasn't like they weren't being impactful in the game. But if you just leave it to, if it's just Hamlet, throw a bit to Everett a little bit, and then something else. If those guys aren't knocking shots down, Mofford's not knocking shots down. They need someone like Kyle Johnson to come in and shoot the ball a lot, which he did. Great win for Surrey, though. I'm happy for them. They've not played that bad basketball this year.
No,
they haven't played. They've not been at that point whereby you think this team is woeful or hopeless. But you add Quincy Taylor and Ryan Martin and have a couple of weeks to sort them out, then suddenly you become you become a different animal. And I think that's where they got to.
Then Ray and Steele to come back as well. We don't know about.
Yeah, Ray. I mean, there's a danger that there's a danger that you have too many. Ray, they were both helping their own ways. Ray in particular has been that extra scorer who has to be guarded, but he's kind of flattered to deceive this year since he's been here. I saw him in pre-season. He looked like he was going to go 25 a game in this league and no one could stop him. Yet, he hasn't really found a groove. And Taylor's probably more of a scoring point guard, so I'm not sure Taylor's really going to help him find that groove. So it may well be that they've got the perfect setup with Taylor, and then Wang is a secondary guard. Obviously, when Wang was having to run the point a lot, they were struggling. But you've got Taylor handling the ball 30 minutes a game, and then at the end of the shot clock, you can give it to Wang to create and create. Then you're doing all right, because that's how they won this game.
So Wang went 1 for 2, by the way, and that made it a 4-point
game. That and a ridiculously horrible screen call.
Yeah. So Hamlet finished with 18 points, 4 of 13 shooting. Donovan Johnson 16 and 9. Everett was 13 points, 6 of 9 shooting. Ryan Martin had 20 points, small sample, but that's his BBL career high. Wang had 19 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and Taylor had 15. Let's go to the Morningside Arena, where the Leicester Riders beat the Cheshire Phoenix 89 points to 85. We speculated last week that Walker was going to be out for a long time, and it was confirmed this week that Mo Walker's out for the season with that Achilles injury. So that's a massive blow for him and obviously for Leicester as well. Starting lineup for Cheshire was the first thing that caught my eye in this game, with Jack and Neighbour starting the game, and from what they were saying today, that was a tactical decision against Leicester.
Yeah, well, I figured out it must have been. I mean, I wasn't quite. I understand Jack because you want to match up with the athleticism on Leicester's wings. Neighbour and Nelson Henry was interesting because you're kind of exchanging 3s for 2s, because Will Neighbour will. My anticipation is that they didn't want Ocherobia in foul trouble.
Yeah,
I think that
was my guess as well.
That was my guess, and they knew that Leicester's going into Nelson Henry early, and that they wanted to protect him from that, because when you look at when there's no Walker coming off the bench, but Adekoya who's coming in, well, they play a bit differently. They don't throw the ball in the post. In theory, it's easier for Ocherobia to avoid picking up those couple of cheap ones, shoving at the beginning of the game. I mean, it nearly worked. It did work for them, and it also nearly could have worked for them more, because Neighbour had 3 open 3s at the top of the key early on, missed every single one of them before he knocked down his 4th. And Leicester weren't in a position to challenge those shots because of Cheshire were playing with a 5 out, and Leicester still working through their starting lineup. We've talked about this before. Their strength at this point in time is their cohesion off the bench, so Cheshire started out relatively well, and it was a game which it went back and forwards.
Didn't really have anything in it in the first half. Neither team led by more than 4 points. The first real run of the game was actually early in the third quarter, where Leicester hit 11 in a row to go 49-42 up, and you got the sense this could be the moment, but then Knicks hit the next 5 to make it a 2-point game.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that always impresses me about Leicester is their competitiveness. They're a really competitive team, and when they are challenged, they always have. You see the little effort plays. You see Connor flying and getting an offensive rebound, or you see Pat Whelan stepping up and knocking down a shot, or challenging a shot at the other end in the fast break, and I thought they stepped up their competitiveness a little bit in the second half of this game. I thought the first half was probably a game that we're going to see quite a lot this season in a league of 36 teams, where teams are in a groove, they're getting their shots, they're playing back and forwards, but you didn't see any particular edge to it. I didn't see any edge to it. I watched it kind of with the 5-second button, obviously, so there might have been something in between, but I didn't see anything. And I thought the third quarter was it was Leicester's bench, though. Kimball came in and made a massive difference.
He had
defense picked up a little bit as well. With Adekoya.
Mackenzie had 5 in a 7-0 run, which put Leicester up 12.
On that, he had 5 points in a second.
In a second?
1 second.
I missed that bit.
You missed that bit.
In a second.
5 seconds. He had 5 points in 1 second, because he scored. He missed the foul shot. He got knocked out of bounds on the baseline.
Yeah.
They put the ball in on the curl, and he drained a 3 off the corner.
Yeah.
So 5 points in 1 second.
Yeah.
Maybe a second and a half.
Yeah. Didn't somebody else from Leicester do that a couple of weeks ago? Was it Whelan did it at Surrey?
Yeah,
didn't he? Yeah.
Bang, bang.
Yeah.
But his spikiness is a feature of that team. He doesn't have to play much, but he's a constant. He's constantly locked in. I'm not sure if he's always locked into the right things, but he's constantly locked in. And Rob's teams have always had a guy like that. They've always had somebody, be it Eric Robinson, rest in peace, or even going Connor throughout. Aaron Hardy, you go all the way back. They've always had somebody who is just there, who's just a nuisance, just an irritant, even if they're backup guys. And him and Adekoya is totally different, but Adekoya is also that nuisance. As he teams still see him as a weak link, and he's not. Cheshire kind of wilted a little bit under that. They don't quite have enough shooting to go basket for basket with Leicester. And eventually Leicester's offense was just too metronomic and wore them down. And that was without much of a game from Whelan. So yeah, you always felt that Leicester were more spiritable in Cheshire, and Cheshire I was watching it back, knowing the score when I watched this game back, and I was waiting to see if it got close, and it only did right at the very end.
Right at the end. So Leicester were 12 up with 6.5 minutes to go, 77-65. And then Teague, Evans and Neighbour hit threes, and they were just chipping away, but it never quite looked like there was enough clock. And when they did get to 3 points in the last minute, Leicester made the free throws they needed to make.
Yeah, they made a couple of threes to pull it back to a 3-point game. Leicester called a timeout, and then there was a foul call on a drive, and I watched it back, and it was a foul. You know, I can't remember who it was. It was a hand. I think maybe not Shirobi or somebody. There was a hand up from the guy who's defending the screen who interfered with Jackson's shot, and Leicester's defense basically handled the rest. Cheshire couldn't get a good look. Yeah, they're kind of an interesting team, Cheshire, because they're all quite now well defined in their roles. I'm not quite sure how high their ceiling is on what they've got at the moment. They're going to need Daniels and Jack to give them probably a little bit more than they have already to raise their ceiling, because you know what you're going to get, I think, from Teague or Cherubia, Neighbour, if they all stay healthy. And obviously Austin is going to be aggressive and is going to help carry them. So those two players are the ones that Ben's going to have to find a little bit more from. And maybe he has to stagger the minutes. He maybe has to play with Jack as a 3 and Jamel as a 4, something like that. Because I'm not sure they're going to win scoring races, so they're going to have to win with their defense. And then, you know, are they good enough to stay off foul trouble because they're not that deep? They're only really going 8 deep. So I mean, they're a perfectly competent PBL team. I'm just thinking for their next step where they're going to go. And it's the two American wings, you know, Daniels and Jack, who are the two who can, I think, take them to the next level.
Whelan had 16 and 8, Jackson 15, Nelson Henry 14 and 7 rebounds. Mackenzie was 5 of 5 shooting for 12 points. Leicester just 5 of 21 from 3-point range.
Well, Leicester made a big effort in this game to get the ball to Nelson Henry as well. But, you know, probably more so than they had in the previous 2 games. I'm quite sure that was a point of emphasis, that they wanted to get him more touches.
Evans with 15, Teague 14 off the bench, Austin 14.7 rebounds, 6 assists. They were 11 of 25 from 3-point range in contrast.
And kind of that's the problem, you know, they've scored. They're at plus 18 on threes, and they've not been in the game in reality. I mean, they had a 10% chance at the end when you make a couple of threes and you're down by 3, but you know, and you're plus 18. So, you know, how are you gonna that's the type of shooting variance you need to win a game.
Yeah.
That's it. And you still haven't come close. So there's a big margin of error there for Leicester, which has to encourage them.
Let's come to today's games. Plymouth City Patriots 79, Leicester Riders 101, a 600th BBL game for Rob Paternoster, only the 3rd coach to get there.
That's coaching.
Hey?
That's
coaching, yeah, just coaching, yeah. The PJ was obviously the first one, and Fab the second. And they are the top 3 for games coached. No Simons, he's got that trapped nerve in his back for Plymouth. Antonio Williams back in the starters alongside Dusha with Simons out. And Mystic Dave, when Leicester lost to Caledonia, said Leicester will win their next 4 games without even knowing who the next 4 games were. And this was the 4th of the next 4 games. Well done, you.
Indeed, thanking you. And I didn't make a penny off it.
So. Plymouth with the first 7 points of the game, and it was right on the brink where you think, oh, Rob's gonna call a timeout and lay into them here, and then Whelan got 7 points, and it's back to a 2-point game.
I felt like I'd watched this game 33 times before.
Yeah. 39
and
times before.
39 now, is
Yeah.
it?
Well, this is the 40th. This was 40 consecutive wins for Leicester over Plymouth.
That's just nonsense. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the reason I did was because certainly in the recent years, a lot of those games have started off with Plymouth flying, with Plymouth coming out the blocks early, Plymouth making shots, Plymouth doing this. And I watched this game at half time because I knew what was happening. I'd seen it happen. Ultimately, Plymouth's defense is not good. That's the reality of it. They have offensive capabilities. VC is playing best offensive basketball he ever has. The scouting report, he's one of those few players who the scout report on him was actually changed. Because it was always, whatever you do, don't help off. Whatever you do, make him a finisher. He doesn't. He's going to hold. He's going to bait you. He's going to wait. He's going to throw it out to a shooter. And now he's developed this scoring mindset, and now you've got to guard him. And makes him twice as dangerous. So offensively, they're playing their fine, but defensively they're all over the place. And it was early in the first quarter. I think the two guys went under a screen with Mark Loving at the ball at the top of the key, which to Mark Loving is just like, he's just like he's playing in a Saturday morning in the park, no one's guarding me. Bang, jump shot, makes it. And even if he misses that one, he's going to make the next one because he's getting his eye in, And I just thought the lack of, they play with a lot of energy and a lot of, and you describe it as intensity, but it's a little bit misplaced at times in relation to their defense. They fly around a little bit, but you don't feel that there's anything underpinning it. And I think that's the reason Leicester win down there, because Leicester are so offensively metronomic and consistent that Leicester just find the holes. And Plymouth don't, unfortunately, at this point, they don't have a defensive discipline to kind of hang with them. And so there's a team that gave up 108 last week in Newcastle, and they're 101 at home today. There's kind of a lot of show, a lot of they are probably the most intense team in the league in relation to the way they carry themselves and the into the game and all that, and the environment down there obviously is great with the lights off at the crowd, with the lights being off and all the lighting, etc., and the noise. But you have to have something to underpin it, and it isn't there at this point in time. And Leicester picked them apart, I thought, and eventually, Plymouth aren't going to make all the shots because man for man, Plymouth do not have as good a shooters as Leicester. No one has as good a shooters as Leicester. Leicester went the whole season last year shooting 43% from the 3-point line. You might win the odd game outscoring them. I mean, Caledonia kind of did last week, but that's when they were making shots as well. But Caledonia's shooters are just a little bit better more proven than Plymouth's. And whenever that drought is going to happen, and it was going to happen, Leicester get out in transition. Leicester get the shots that they want. 15-point game at half time, and as I say, I turned off.
Well, Dusha kept them in it for a bit. I think the key bit of this was 15-10 after 5 minutes, and 28-41 after 15 minutes, and they just kept losing Whelan, and it was just like madness. Whelan at halftime was 7 of 7 shooting, 4 of 4 from 3-point range for 18 points. Leicester were 9 of 16 from 3-point range at halftime. And Paul asked on the commentary what Leicester's record was at up 10 at halftime. Just before halftime, he said, "You've got to get it back into single figures because I wonder what their record is leading by 10 or more at halftime." And going back to 2009, the answer is 175-4. So my notes stopped at halftime after I got that stat as well, because I thought this is the end of this. Mackenzie did hobble out of the game in the third quarter with a little bit of an ankle thing, but there wasn't really much in the second half, just scrappy. Dusha,
don't tell me Patrick Whelan's going to be injured for the GP window as well.
No. He didn't really play very much, to be fair. He took one second half shot. He played 19 minutes in total. Dusha had 24 and 8, Williams 22, Bell 13 points and 4 blocks. Whelan, despite only playing 19 minutes, led Leicester with 18. Jackson also had 18 and 8 rebounds. Nelson Henry 17 points and 6 rebounds. Leicester, we talked about their field goal percentage in the previous game, 52% in this one, 14 of 38 from 3-point range. So cooled off a little bit in the second half.
But they got 38 looks.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't shoot many bad shots.
No.
I didn't watch the second half, but I don't imagine that they were coming over half court and jacking it, because it's not the way they operate. And, you know,
in a 40-minute game, 38.
In a 40-minute game, they got 38 looks, and you know, that's not acceptable. You know, not against Leicester. Leicester historically, last year, obviously, I don't know where they are this year, probably not quite as high, but last year they were historically good 3-point shooting team. They were upwards of 43%, which is nuts. You know, it's just absolutely nuts. And the first thing about the scouting report for Leicester is that you don't let Darren Nelson-Henry go off for 6 in the first quarter, and you guard him inside. And the second thing is you close all the shooters out. And you close them out left. So Patrick Whelan, you close them out left. And Rob's going to get angry here because I'm giving the scout report again. But Patrick Whelan, you close them out left. Zach Jackson, you close them out left. Mark Loving, you just close them out, make them dribble, make them put the ball on the floor and get the help there. And I didn't see any of that from Plymouth in the first half. And when they did close them out, they closed Patrick Whelan out to his right. So he's one dribble, he's got a layup. You know, so you have to be the biggest. I'm more and more certain that in this lengthy season, the biggest determiner between the teams that are going to end up at the top and the bottom, and who are going to win the games at the top that they should win, and not lose the games that they shouldn't lose, will be discipline. You know, it's going to be. You're saying these players so many times. It's not going to be about what you can do with the basketball. It's going to be about what's in here, and how you guard people, and how disciplined you are in relation to that. And that's why I fear a little bit for Plymouth. Because that's the one area of their game that at this point in time I just don't see. I'm not sure it's going to get much better. You know, they lost Joe Hart, who was probably their most disciplined player early, pre-season. And they can all play, no question, and it's going to be a fun game to watch when they do play, because they're going to be flying up and down, and they're going to be in your face, they're going to be doing all that stuff. But they're going to have to find a way of getting some attention to detail. Because they didn't show me that last week, and they didn't show me that again today.
Let's go to Bristol, where the Bristol Flyers handed the London Lions their second defeat of the domestic season, winning 75-71. No Soko with that back problem we talked about earlier. No Van Oostrom either. I think he was just in the rotation of players that they've been doing thus far, and no Bell.
So because they only had 11 lined up, they only had 11 suited.
Oh, right.
On the scoreboard.
I don't know.
No Van Oostrom, no Soloade either. That I could see, and they had Kaboza and Comagum suited, but they only had 11 on the scoreboard, on the scorecard, and that was interesting because I was thinking to myself, wow, has ever a team with that much money gone to play the player short? Which is kind of weird. So it's all interesting. London, the London bubble is becoming more interesting, right? And it was always going to, because the kind of the high of the we're here. We've got, we're doing this, we're doing that. This is the kind of what an opportunity for everybody living in a great city, new team coming together, lots of buzz around them. It's November now. It's not September anymore, it's November now. And suddenly it's the high. The high is so it's off to Macedonia or Gran Canaria or Poland or wherever, and then back to play in Bristol, and that type of stuff. And then suddenly there are some players who, are doing all this and they're not playing much. So you got guys who are going, over to Gran Canaria and playing 4 minutes, and the team's losing by 25. So they're immediately thinking, it's not my fault we're losing by 25. Because I only played 4 coaches that played me. And then on top of that, so then you get kind of the bugs with the travel, and then you get the little niggles, and how much is a player. To be honest, the more you get, this is something I've learned from the NBA and my contact within the NBA. You know, that the more you get paid, the less you're likely to pay through a niggle.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They'll let you know, primarily because the staff won't allow you.
Yeah.
You're too valuable. All right. So then you look at, I'm looking at suddenly they got Solowade's out, Van Oostrom's out, Masoko's got a bad back. Obviously they've given Decker 3 weeks to get over his sprained ankle. And I'm thinking, you know, how much now, who is their core? And how much now are all those guys bought in to winning 34 games in the BBL or 32 games in the BBL, right? Or how much are they thinking, well, hang on, I was perfectly healthy and he played me 4 minutes in Gran Canaria. I'm hurting a bit now. Why would I put myself out there now to play and not play at my best because I'm hurt and not play through that? Now, that's all speculation. So it might all be bollocks, pardon the language. But, you know, they got 4 players out effectively, which is, you know, and the schedule has been tough, but in relation to minutes played, not that tough, right? And minutes played by individual players. Then you add in the fact that they've got they're now losing, they're on a losing streak now. Forget about, you know, Europe BBL differences. Players don't necessarily say it like that. We do, they don't. Yeah. So they lose it. They won the European game. Since then, they've lost 2. Yeah. They lose at Sheffield. And now they come to Bristol. So they've lost
3 in a row. 3 in a row. This was 4.
This was 4. So they hadn't I'm just thinking they hadn't won a BBL game in between. No. So this is the 4th game, right? And losing reveals character. You know, it reveals competitive spirit. It also teaches you. It teaches the coach a lot about his team, and the coach won't know anything about his team until you've actually been through something like that. You then add in the fact that they've kind of run an NBA squad, 15 players. That's the way they've decided to do it. Still with only probably one true point guard, and that's Van Oostrom. And they've had to balance different injuries to different players, which means people have been moving around. And one of the things that we talked about last week was the difficulty with Sheffield was when they put Zubcic in the starting lineup. And I thought that just created their bench.
Yeah.
And I was amazed today, and I mean that genuinely amazed that he started and Ruban was on the bench. Now, there are 2 players on that Lions team that would start every game for me, without any shadow of a doubt, without any question. Decker and Herban. Those 2. You know, everything I've seen about them, they are the 2. You know, everybody else, you can move people in and out of your lineups. You've got 2 centers. At this point in time, you would need Luke Nelson to start almost every game, but it depends on what role he's playing. Even Ovi, I wouldn't automatically start him because it might depend on matchups. But Decker and Ruban, that's the first game he's come off the bench all season. And that was done, I'm almost certain, because you're missing a 4. Your 4's not playing. So you've got 4 on the bench. Now Zubcic, who's really, really good. Right? So it's easy. You plug a positional guy. That means Decker can still play at the 3. And you've then got the 2 guards because you know Bristol are quick, and you know Bristol are going to start with a number of guards. So you start with Best and Nelson, right? But that throws Ruban off, and he's been your best, most consistent player basically since Decker's been out, since everybody's been out, and it put Zubcic into a situation where he's competing for shots with all the starters. And I just, you know, what they had going with Zubcic in that bench. I just can't believe he dropped that. Just can't get my head around the fact that, you know, you would do anything to change that, because they've been on drought even when Zubcic has played, let alone when he hasn't. And the advantage, of course, is that Decker, who's the star, he gets to play his position, which is the 3. He's a 3. He's an NBA 3. You know, that's why he wasn't. You know, and he has played in the NBA. But playing in the NBA and playing in the BBL is very different. in relation to the size of the players that you're going up against, right? Now, if you played Sam Decker at the 4 in the NBA, he's got no shot. He's got no shot, right? The guys that who would be guarding him, who he would just marmalize him, doesn't have the physical strength. He is a NBA prototype 3-man. But in the BBL, he plays at the 4 to start with. He's guarding VJ King. VJ King 6'6". He can do that.
Yeah.
You know. Now I don't know if it's the coach not wanting to put nose out of joint, because players get very precious about the position that they play, and what they are, and this is what I am, and all this stuff. And you've heard this even with Anthony Davis in the NBA saying, I don't want to play the 5 and all this stuff, blah blah. Even though you're 7 foot tall with enormous arms and getting smaller, and you're thinking, but I'm a 4, not a 5. And it gets. I don't know if there's anything of that going on. Again, speculation. Again, might be rubbish, but I don't get not starting Hurban. Is it Hurban or Hurban? Because I've heard two. Hurban.
It's somewhere in between all of those things. Yes.
So do I pronounce it with HR or pronounce it HUR?
It's somewhere in between the two of those things.
All right, that's really helpful. Thank you. Commentator who doesn't want to get things wrong speaks and punches it. Right. Okay. Well, I'll call him Wojciech.
Yeah.
Not starting him. So that to me was slightly weird. More than slightly weird. And then the game. I mean, the game started off.
Well, shall I do that bit? We've probably done 10 minutes on this. We've not actually got to the opening tip yet, have we? Ollison and Miller hit threes. Bristol were just edging it, and then King and Miller hit a couple of threes in an 8-0 run. And without being the first person ever to compare Buducnost to Bristol Flyers, this was very similar to the game the other day. They jumped out to a 14 point lead in the first quarter.
And Bristol and London scored early. Decker got going early, and then they fell off a bit of a cliff offensively. I hate to say it, but Hufos looked like an average BBL centre. I don't know if he's healthy or whatever, but he did not look like the player that he looked at the first game of the season at Sheffield, when he turned up in the second half and basically marmalised Sheffield. And I thought the whole game, he really. I was looking for value added from him, and I saw kind of a league average player. You wouldn't look at the game and say that, say he played any better, he was any more impactful than Del Pesh, for instance. So that might be body, that might be mentality, it might be the fact it's November, it might just be injuries. 33, he's got an enormous amount of miles on the clock, which is kind of a worry for London, because a lot of their players have got miles on the clock. Zubcic is 30, Wojciech is 32. These guys, Soko's in great shape, but he's been around. They've got miles on the clock, and Kufos is most obvious example of that. And they didn't guard the 3-point shot well. It's a bit of a recurring theme. Yeah. Bristol playing at home, and Bristol made some.
So let's spin it forward. Nelson and Zubcic chipped away a little bit. It was still 7 points at halftime. Flyers then started the third quarter with 10 of the opening 12 points, which forced an early timeout. Decker then drags London back in with a 9-0 run, 52-46. But then Watson Gale, we talked about him earlier, a couple of threes with 5 to go. They're up 63-52.
And that, whichever way you look at it, 5 minutes to go, that London team scoring 52 points in the BBL.
Yeah, that was my take. Yeah, what I actually did was, and it didn't come to pass, but I started looking up when was the last time a team beat London not scoring 70.
Yeah,
because with 5 minutes to go, it looked like Bristol were going to win the game without needing to score 70.
Well, the amount of offensive talent that they have. And I mean, there was a couple of interesting things happened. I mean, Zubcic picked up his third foul a minute into the third quarter, and the coach benched him until a minute and a half into the fourth quarter, right? And he was a -19 in this game, so he wasn't being, so, it didn't particularly help having him in the game with London, but they never really got him into any form of rhythm that I could see. And he's a guy who's been shooting a lot of shots for you. Now, I learned the hard way on a bus trip back from Milton Keynes about substituting players when I shouldn't. It was 11 years ago. The player's name was Charles Smith. Charles Smith picked up a third foul in the Milton Keynes shopping centre, halfway through the third quarter. And, you know, somebody who read all the books and watched all the TV and listened to Hughie Brown, but had only been on the bench of a team for about 3 months. It was obvious. The obvious thing to do was you sub Charles out, you keep him till the fourth quarter, so he's got 2 fouls, right?
Yeah.
I was made aware on the way home that is not the way players work.
Yeah.
And the exact phrase were, "You know the game, but you need to know more about players." Basically, because, you know,
Scooby-Doo was coaching the.
Scooby-Doo was coaching. That was a bad impression. I'll leave you to guess.
Yeah.
Hey, you know the game. You know the game, but you don't know players. You don't know players. I'm like, I'm arguing back, but it was a waste of time. And the point being is that you take the guy out then he gets out, he's no rhythm, so you're not getting anything back from him when he comes back in. Now, only the very best players can do that. And if there's actually a kind of a move in the NBA now as well to play people when they're in foul trouble more than there ever was before, because people have kind of worked out that, you know, if he's one of your best players, you know, there's no point saving, you know, every minute matters. And if he gets the end of the game on 4 fouls and you've sat him down for 12 minutes and you've got a problem. No, Zubcic actually fouled out, but even so, that kind of surprised me that he sat him down for that long. Then you have the lack of the bench that they had. Now their bench has been primarily Soloade has been probably their number 1 reserve whilst they've been down on bodies. Van Oostrom's played a little bit as well, and Quealy. Now Quealy is an interesting chap because defensively he is absolutely elite. You know, you can see he guards people. He's got long arms. He's disciplined. He's really, really, really good. Offensively, he's been a black hole. He's been horrible. They haven't been able to get anything going with him at all. And he almost a guy that you don't need to guard. But because of his lack of bodies, and he didn't want to insert either of the young guys in the game, you know, Quealy ended up playing quite a lot of minutes in this game. And I thought that hampered them offensively. You then have Nelson, who's not in any rhythm at all, because you know when Nelson's irritated because he's talking to the refs. He's just a bit of a malcontent on the court. He's fighting himself. You can see it. And you know, that team just needed him to be able to go and give him the ball and make some plays and go and play. And he actually didn't play the last 7 minutes of the game. The coach gave up on him. So you throw all of that stuff into the melting pot. It's a heck of a melting pot. The more talent you have, the more players you have, the harder it is. Right? This is why it's easier for Leicester. It's easier for Caledonia because they don't have these multiple options. They're not. That's why it's easier for all those coaches and just for Ryan Schmidt. Now, Ryan Schmidt has the advantage because he has all the talent. But having all that talent creates more decisions. Keeping the group together, making sure that the guys are all together in relation to who wins, who loses. Luke Nelson is not thinking that loss is his fault because Luke Nelson didn't play the last 8 minutes. Luke Nelson expects to play. Okay, Zubcic is sitting on the bench in the third quarter. You know, face like thunder because he wants to be in the game. And that's the stuff that they're going to have to deal with. Now, I'm not saying they can't deal with it or they won't deal with it, but it has to appear, it has to show itself before it can be dealt with. You know what I mean? It can't, can't assume it's never going to happen. It has happened now. They've now lost 4 games in a row. Decker made some plays near the end, but not quite enough. Sharma has disappeared. Don't know, he played great on Tuesday night and he's just disappeared. He played like 6 minutes in this game. So he's probably sitting there thinking, why am I not playing? And there's a lot to deal with because all these guys are really good players. And Herbert, and as I say, Herbert's come off the bench.
Let's spin it forward because we've got a lot of missed threes to get through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Miller makes a 3, 69-62 with 1:57 to go. Quealy makes a 3 on an offensive rebound, 69.
Stepping up, making it.
65. King then misses a 3. Delpesh offensive rebounds. Zubcic fouls out. Delpesh 1 of 2 from the free throw line, 70-65 with 1:15 to go. Kufos then misses. Decker manages to wrap it up. Possession error for London, so they get the ball from the end line. Decker misses a 3. Quealy with the rebound. Decker then makes a 3. 51 seconds to go. 70-68. Mahan then misses a 3. This is where Rose loving it now because all these offensive rebounds, Watson Gale with the offensive rebound. He's fouled, makes 2 free throws, 25.6 seconds to go, 72-68. Decker then misses a 3, offensive rebound. Queeley misses from long range. King gets the ball. He makes 1 for 2 from the free throw line, and that's almost that. Basically, they're up 5. Decker does hit an incredible 3 with 2.6 seconds, but timeout advanced the ball and they got it in, and that was all they needed.
They got it in. They got it in.
They got it in. Yeah. Joel was trying to talk that 5 seconds into existence.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they just give it. King went and got the ball. King got to halfway, then got the ball, and they did it the way they were meant to. It's you don't have Luke Nelson at the end. That's I don't know if he's hurt or whatever, but we had Kufos in at the end, and I thought Kufos in the game was really struggled in the game. And if you go back the last 3 years, there's not many games he's played 29 minutes. I looked at his numbers for last year when he was in Greece, and he's playing 10, 12 minutes a game. And then you put him in Bristol in that environment with those guys running up and down, and he's playing 29 minutes. I think it's 29. I did check the numbers, but that's a number that's stuck in my head. I don't think that's sustainable. And overall, great win for Bristol. Watson Gale again stepped up, made those 2 foul shots. Critical.
29 minutes 13 seconds.
That's you tell me. We'll find out for next week when he last played 29 minutes 13 seconds in a game. Because I don't imagine he played that many minutes in many NBA games. And you get extra timeouts and that. And I know he hasn't in the last couple of years when he's been playing EuroLeague. So I know they've got a week off because of the national team stuff, so you can burn them out a little bit. But I'm not sure that his efficiency is going to go up playing that much. And so they've got stuff to sort. And the reason we're talking about them a lot is because they're the story. Bristol playing at home and shooting the ball well and being aggressive. And I've talked about them already in the previous game. They're not the story. The story is London's lost 4 games in a row. So you have to try and figure out what it is that's going on and speculate and guess and point out what we see. I thought it was there was another technical in this game, a coach technical, and I didn't think much of the call that Zubcic got his 4th foul on.
No.
So he wasn't quite square to him, but he was pretty much stood there and got ran over. And Coach Smith, hasn't got many technicals this year in the BBL, but he may be warming to the theme. Which is sometimes you got to stand up for it and you got to say what you think.
King was 17, Miller 15, Watson Gale 14. They shot 37% from the floor. They had 15 offensive rebounds and only 6 second chance points, but they had enough to win.
The one thing that Rowe doesn't point out, or I imagine you don't get into enough to deal with, is the one thing that offensive rebound does is it kills the opponent's ability to fast break.
Yeah. Okay. His thing was about it wears them down, but that's the same.
It wears them down, but also it means you can't leak out. So London you have to stay there to retain the rebound, because all the coach is saying before the game is, Christ, look at how many offensive rebounds this team has. Everybody has to rebound. That means the players are being told, if you don't rebound, you're not going to play. So the players all go to the glass, but then there's nobody running the other way. So in many ways, by sending everybody to the glass, it's counterintuitive, but it actually assists your fast break defense, as opposed to if you all run back or you don't know precisely what you're doing. But look, Bristol, Bristol beating London. If we'd said that at the beginning of the season, I think, imagine what Lasker would say now.
Yeah, indeed.
If we said that at the beginning of the season, that, in 6 weeks in, then Bristol are going to beat London at home. We would say, no way. And they've done it, and they're without a guy. Who's possibly their best player in Thomas Bell. So, kudos to them. Absolutely, incredible weekend for them. Incredible weekend.
Decker had 28 points and 9 rebounds. Zubcic 11, Nelson 10, 5 and 4. 42% field goal percentage for London. 16 offensive rebounds, 17 second chance points.
I think Decker could go in his pajamas and he'd come in
Yeah.
I mean, let's be clear. I mean, the one thing I really actually should say is that his competitive spirit really shines through. And
it does, yeah.
The guys who get paid the most and have the best resumes aren't the ones with the greatest competitive spirit. Because the skill level goes up, the willingness to deal with all the rubbish reduces. And that can. But he is really, he was in that game right till the very end. He was talking to King on the foul line. He was talking about all sorts of stuff, and that's really impressive because like you say, he ain't played in the gym like that since he was 15, probably less, since he was 12. And for him to be treating it in that way, and he is probably the best player we've ever seen in this country. If we're talking relevant to the level that he has played at and the stage of his career he is in. Because he's probably the best we've ever seen.
Let's go to the final game, which was getting scarily close to overtime, but managed to finish in regulation. Cheshire Phoenix 77, Caledonia Gladiators 73. Fraser was back, although there were occasions where he looked to be not moving quite as freely. And they went back to Evans and Ocherobia in the starting lineup, Cheshire. Gladiators with 7 in a row, out to an 11-point lead, 8.5 minutes into the game, and this was almost the flip of the previous meeting.
Yeah, they were ready to play. They've been jumped on twice. So what do you think the coach is going to be telling them? What do you think is going to be there for? Because we've been on the road twice. We've been down 20, once at Cheshire, once at Bristol, down 20 in the first 15 minutes. I even caught a bit of Gareth's pre-game interview, and he basically said that. So there is no question that there was a point of emphasis. And it's remarkable, when there is a point of emphasis, and it's an obvious one to the players, so it's clear as day, everybody knows what's happened because the scoreboard doesn't lie, and the coach makes it a point of emphasis. It's amazing how that way it works. The coach can make as many points of emphasis as he wants, but if it's not happened already, the players will, some of them will take it in, but others of them will be, of course, he's bound to say that. That's what we have to rebound. Yeah, right, of course. Well, we know we have to rebound. I'm a basketball player. That's what I do. We have to start. We have to start well. Well, yeah, right. Yeah, but of course you have to start well. That's part of the game. That's what a player will think. But when it's happened twice in a row, suddenly the players concentrating on that stuff, and they became the aggressors in this game very early. And I watched most of this game because I decided I was going to go one game a week, one game at a time this time, and then use the fast forward button to catch up.
Okay.
So I missed the start, but I started at the start and fast forwarded it every time.
Okay.
So I'm trying. I'm really trying to find a way of giving everything maximum attention. And they were the aggressor. They were all over the boards. They were, they've got some set players. They were moving. They ran slow enough screens, threw it back to Adams. Adams made a couple of threes. Cheshire were out of kilter. Their guards, really in particular, were out of kilter. Jamel made some shots, but apart from that, you didn't really see much going for Cheshire. And Caledonia just kind of faded away in this game. And I say there's a lot going on there amongst that group with the coach, because at one, with David Sloan playing the 1, playing the 2. Ali Fraser came back. He wasn't healthy enough to play Friday, but he was healthy to play on Sunday, which is always a bit of a no-no for me. If you could play on Friday, if you play on Sunday, you can play on Friday. If you can't, you can't. If you're healthy, you're not. He came back and he was a bit rusty, missed a couple of layups. And he's kind of sharing minutes with Tapé. Then halfway at the beginning of the third quarter, I know you'll get to it in a minute, but at the beginning of the third quarter, the lineup changed, and so they started Fraser and Onwas instead of Malcolm and Tapé. And you're just trying to figure out precisely, what direction they're going in. But you tell us what happened in the first half.
Well, I mean, Teague sort of got them back to 6, but actually I was going to run it forward to the end of the third
Yeah,
quarter where Nick's got 8 of the last 9 points to lead 59-58. That was where they really got back into it.
I thought Marcus Evans was really hot on a brain fade in this game. You know, as well as he played last week. You know, I think Ben Thomas said half time they had 13 turnovers, and they weren't much better in the third quarter. But Caledonia,
I think they ended up with 23.
23 turnovers and you win a game. Wow. But Caledonia's an interesting roster because we all look at them and think, wow, they're good. He's good. He's good. He can play. Whoa, we all remember the game at London where they lit them up and they could have won that game early on. And they're all new guys, so we're all kind of fresh to them. So we're looking now. And then you look at the record. What's the record? 4-5, 4-6, something like that.
They are 3-5.
3-5. You know, and you think, well, you know, if Newcastle had beaten Surrey, Newcastle would be 3-5. Newcastle could have won that game, and the
narrative.
The narrative is very different, you know. And I mean, obviously Newcastle are 2-6, so it's not the best point, but it's just the name the team that came into my head. But the narrative is very different in relation to them. You know, they've got this guy who's scoring 37 and dropping this. You've got these big guys who are playing really well.
Well, Plymouth are 3-4.
Plymouth are 3-4, yeah. You know, and yet I'm absolutely down on them because of they're 3-4. You know, so they've got a better record than this team, and in theory, Caledonia have more out and out talent than Plymouth at this point, particularly given that Plymouth have played without Williams and without Simons on various games. So what is it? You know, so what is the real Caledonia? And the biggest thing I see is that outside of Sloan, they don't really have much off the dribble. They don't have much in the way of ability to create an advantage. You know, what I mean by that is that Adams is a big guard, but they don't really post him up. He's more of a shooter. Onwas and Bailey are really solid utility guys. Malcolm is a shooter, but not a guy, not a creator. Probably their second option outside of Sloan in relation to creating an advantage against the defender is Fraser in the post, and Fraser's not been healthy for 3 weeks. So how do you and creating an advantage doesn't mean scoring the ball. It means getting a defender out of position so you can rotate the basketball and get open. Basically, you can just the most obvious way of doing it is a screen and roll, because the screen gets a player open. To a point whereby another defender has to come. You get 2 defenders on the ball or 2 defenders committed to the ball, and then you have the opportunity to move the ball around and get an open shot. Outside of Sloan, they don't really have anybody who can do that. You know, Jimenez hasn't played much since the beginning of the season. Bunyan's playing spot minutes to move Sloan to the 2. But Adams' shots have dropped as Sloan's have gone up. And what that means is that Gareth is left in this very difficult situation whereby, you know, and we had it a little bit Newcastle, because it's not we, had it a little bit with Fletcher last year. You know, it was him. You know, you gave the ball to anybody else in the screen and roll, Person or Johnson or Kyle Williams, and it was a turnover. It was just awful. You know, there was just no, Person could shoot, Kyle Williams could shoot, Johnson could shoot, but basically if Fletcher didn't create a shot for them, the best option was to throw it into Defoe and have him create a shot for them. And that's kind of where I'm getting to a little bit with Caledonia. And it's great when Sloan goes up to 36 and they all make shots and they beat Leicester at home. But you have to be able to maintain that. And Gareth doesn't want to play that way. I know he doesn't. I've seen the way his teams are very well drilled. They're very well coached. They run some nice stuff. They run great out. You always watch the out of timeout plays for a coach. They run some. They always get good looks out of timeouts. No dunks on the little plays that they've got going. But they just, their offense dried in this game. And it was, and when Sloan wasn't making shots, there
wasn't much else, because the only other guy who scored is Onwas, who we've already discussed plays really without the ball. He
plays without the ball and shares in transition and stuff. And basically, if Cheshire hadn't thrown them the ball so much in this game, then this game
I think I said 23 turnovers. It might be the other way around. It might have been 21 points and 21 1 turnovers and 23 points from turnovers. It was
That's
those
it.
two numbers, the points off turnovers. So you get 20 plus points off turnovers, but you only have 73 points and you lose the game.
Yeah, exactly. So that's indicating that there's some stuff that they're gonna have to sort out. I'm not sure, because they run some nice stuff. They run some nice plays. You know, they move the ball well. So I think it may be more kind of the skill set of the personnel. Maybe they're gonna have to throw the ball into Bailey in the post. Maybe they're gonna have to throw the ball into Onwas a bit more. Maybe just something else, to try and create mismatches, because those two guys are good, or wings, that's really big, strong wings. So you might want to try and get them down low and get them some cheap ones, but you haven't really got a stretch five. So so the paint's going to be clogged because Tape is going to be down there. And then obviously then you end up coming back to Sloan. The one thing that kind of, pinged in my brain with in this game was that I think it was probably in the second quarter, which end with it? Yeah. Sorry, the third quarter. No, I can't remember, one of the quarter. Sloan got a steal, and then Bailey ran 2 feet behind him, and Sloan went and laid it up on his own with 2-0 break.
Yeah.
You're a point guard, you throw the ball to the big guy.
Yeah.
You look behind, and he looked behind him, so he knew he was there.
Yeah.
If I'm the point guard at that point in time, if I'm, it's fine, but I was just like, okay. And then the fan will say, well, why not? He's there. He's got the steal. He's made the play, and he made the steal on the halfway line. But I'm throwing the ball off the backboard or something, or even hand the ball to the other guy and say, you're running with me. I'm going to give you the ball. So little things like that. And then it got to the end, and the end was bizarre, wasn't it?
Yeah. So scoring really hard to come by in the fourth quarter. So we'll get to the last 2 minutes. Teague with an offensive rebound put back ties the game at 69 with 1:47 to go. Onwas missed. Then we had typical Larry Austin to the basket and 71-69. Misses it. I think he was slowing through it over his head, did he? And Onwas on a fast break dunked it. 70, yeah.
Look, Sloan is serious. I'm not down on Sloan. Sloan is seriously talented. They just need it's just not the way they have to work it.
Travel or no travel?
No travel.
No travel. I didn't think it was, but
no travel, because it's a 0 step.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You get basically, it's always been the rules that you get 2 steps. Since James Harden kind of modified the rules to his own benefit.
Yeah.
It was formalized 3 or 4 years ago that when after you pick the ball up, your first step is a 0 step.
Yeah.
So the first step doesn't count.
Yeah.
So I slowed it down.
Yeah.
I slowed it down, played it, but for me, pick the ball up on a 0 step, 1, 2, and perfectly legit.
I didn't think it was travel either. It was one of them where because Mark was saying, "Oh, that's a definite travel." I was like, "I'm going to have to wind that back," because I didn't think it was.
If you watch the first time, he covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, but it's because he takes a step and then one dribble and then he takes his 0 step and then he's got the.
And also, that's not a move people make if they're in traffic.
Yeah.
If you're in traffic, if you've got players around you, you don't pick the ball up that early.
Yeah.
So it's an unusual move to see. So you're seeing it first time, you're thinking, whoa, whatever. So no, but I rewound it and checked it as well. Yeah.
So then 51.6 seconds to go. Austin is underneath. Austin underneath scores.
Nice pass from Neighbour, I think.
Yeah, 73-71, and then there's a bit of a kerfuffle, and it didn't happen on camera.
Yeah.
But my assumption from what Mark was saying and what happened ensuing is that the assistant coach Daryl Wood went down and tried to pull the net down. That was
what it sounds like, but that would be the other end, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so he'd gone to the other end of the floor, where the rocks. So it's the opposite end of the bench that they were at, to pull the net down, because the net must have been. I'm assuming the net was caught up on the the ring.
Daryl's not 7'2".
Well, maybe he's got more hops than we're aware of. But you could hear Ben going, "Their assistant coach is on the court," so it was at that end of the floor, and so he gets a technical. He then comes back to the bench and he gets a technical for it. But I just thought, I wonder what Fab would have made of Dave running down the other end of the court to pull the net down.
I would have been walking home.
Yes, I'm sure.
I would have been walking home. That's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you just, I've stood up and shouted enough times.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it was even a timeout. If it's a
No.
timeout, kind of there's rules. So players, coach kind of step on the court in a timeout. You're not meant to, but players come off your high five and that type of stuff. You might do that, or you might say, it's just utterly bizarre. But it has to, I suppose, it has to be a technical.
Has to be a technical, yeah. So we're slightly assuming that he's come on court, but based on the fact that Ben is shouting in the background, their assistant coach has come on court, and so they get a technical as a result, which Will Neighbour makes the free throw, and it's 74-71. 35 seconds to go. Sloan is fouled, but it's the fourth team foul, so it's a sideline ball. Sloan then misses. Jack with a great play to keep it in bounds, and keep it with Cheshire. Austin's fouled, but again it's the fourth, so it's a sideline ball. And then Bailey commits his fifth foul with 19.3 seconds to go. Anderson makes 2 free throws to make it a 5-point game, and then almost missed, and Anderson got a run out, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, two things. Ben ran out of patience with Evans halfway through the fourth quarter. They were actually better for it because they kind of played through the bigs a bit more, and that also allowed Austin to handle as well. I didn't think Caledonia reacted particularly well to Austin handling the basketball in that situation, or where Austin was. Austin is a bucket getter around the rim. You got to keep him out of the paint. If he's in the paint, even if he's not got the ball in the paint, you need to be absolutely draped all over him to make sure he doesn't touch the ball. There are 2 guys in this league you don't want touching the basketball in the paint. That's Larry Austin and
I can't think now.
Rashad Hassan.
Rashad Hassan, yes, of course,
yeah,
yes. Yeah. I was thinking guards. It's probably
a bit of a cheat. So Larry Austin and Rashad Hassan, you just do not want them touching the basketball in the paint. Everything you do, people they use the phrase "wall up." Well, you don't just build a wall with these guys. You're building one of Donald Trump's wall. You're building an Elon Musk space satellite system to keep them out.
And you're getting Cheshire to pay for the wall.
And Cheshire to pay for the wall. I like it. You have to do it, and they didn't do it. And actually, there was a play even before the two plays that Austin made. He got fouled on one before going baseline, which we got on the baseline camera, and you see Adams grabbed his arm. And he didn't do a good job of that. I just thought that, and I would also hesitate to suggest, but I'd probably be right in saying that I don't think probably third quarter onwards, beginning of the fourth quarter onwards, probably Sloan, my guess would be maybe 1 of 8. He went cold, he missed some shots. And he still shot them, and because they were the looks that they were getting.
So he was 9 of 26 overall.
9 of 26.
And I think he had 18 at halftime, did he?
Yeah, exactly. So most of them
23 in total.
So most of those baskets have come early. So maybe apart from the odd layup, he maybe made a layup or 2 in the second half. But at the end of the game, now he's had 2 games in. He's dropped 37 on Bristol, and he's had another game on Sunday. I don't know if they stayed over or not. I assume that they did. That's a long weekend, and so maybe his legs have gone a little bit as well. But their offense dried up. As you say, in the fourth quarter, noticeably their offense dried up, and when Cheshire stopped throwing in the ball, and Evans had 8 turnovers, and so when Ben eventually decided that he wasn't going to allow a 9th, then they didn't have any other ways of scoring.
Anderson had 18 points, Austin 11 and 6, Teague 11 and 10 rebounds. Sloan had 23 points, 4 assists. Onwas had 15 points and 7 rebounds. Bailey had 11. A quick run through.
Just on that, how many foul shots did Sloan have?
I don't know, but give me a second. He was 4 of 4.
Right, so he had 28 shots in this game. So basically 26 shots and 4 foul shots. He had 30 shots against Bristol, so he's had a 58 shot weekend. Come on, then tell us the last time someone had
a lot.
Weekend.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Say John White randomly.
Yeah, that's a lot to place on the shoulders of a rookie.
Yeah.
No, it really is.
quickly run through the table. London Lions are top with 7 wins and 2 defeats. Bristol second, 7-3. Leicester 6-3. Manchester 5-3. Cheshire are 5-6. Sheffield 4-5. Plymouth 3-4. Caledonia 3-5. Newcastle 2-6, and Surrey 1-6. Oh, and I didn't mention that Surrey's win made it the earliest point since 2009, I think it was, that everybody's had a win and a loss by date.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And there's probably a little bit of separation with the top 4 there now. You're probably seeing the top 4 as the 4 teams that are playing the best basketball. The coronation of London has been kind of put on hold.
Yeah.
Because of the stuff they're going through at the moment, which we've talked about. Outside of the top 4, probably Sheffield are the most likely to kind of crash it because they're 4-1 in the last 5 games. So you have to think that they've got a shot at crashing that as well. And then it's going to be, of the other teams, it's going to be who gets their stuff together the quickest, because they've all got talent.
Yeah.
Talent is there, and it's who is, and that's what I was talking about, is who is going to be the most consistent, the most disciplined, every player, when interviewed, and you must have heard thousands of them, and you've probably done thousands of them. Every player, when interviewed, will say winning is the only thing. Yeah, at least if you've got a player who is dumb enough not to say that.
Yeah. There are 1 or 2 that.
But they won't be around for long.
They won't.
No. But it's not about saying it; it's about doing it.
Yeah.
And winning plays, or the defensive plays, or the hustle plays, or the competitiveness, or the willingness not to be knocked out of your stride by either a niggle or an injury or some kind of thing that's going on at home or some problems or whatever. It's the reason that teams who are consistent win. It's because of the mental approach to it. And that's going to be the difference. So the teams at the bottom half who can hold that together mentally and stay together, and I'm not just talking about 1 win in 3 games, because every team in this league should win 1 win in 3 games, right? There is no team in this league with the talent that they have who should win less than 10 games this season. None. They're playing 18 home games, right? You have to. There's no reason why Surrey, Newcastle, Plymouth, whatever, it was at the bottom at the moment, should not win 10 to 12 games. And it's never been like that I can remember, but the mentality is going to be everything. And whether they can string, the better teams are the ones who can string win streaks together.
Yeah.
They're the ones who've got veterans who've been together, who understand what it's about.
Yeah.
And London don't include, and that's not London. That's Leicester and Manchester at this point. London don't have veterans who've been together, and they have very, very good players who played at a higher level. But ABL season, Bristol, whatever, Plymouth, whatever, Glasgow, playing Caledonia, whatever, they haven't been through that before. And most of them will probably never go through it again. So that's going to be a real test. And that's what we were talking about right at the beginning of the season, when we were talking about how much money is too much money.
Yeah.
How much money destroys the competitiveness.
Indeed. So in the latest edition of doing production meetings live on air, or live, next weekend is obviously the international weekend. There is randomly 1 BBL game thrown in just for good measure. I think
when's that?
I think it's Saturday. I'm not
Well,
sure.
Better be, because
or maybe Friday. I don't know.
I'm 49-year-old on Sunday. And I'm not expecting any.
So, given that it's your birthday, and I didn't know this, what I was proposing to mark your birthday was not doing Sunday Night Breakdown on Sunday, but shifting it to Monday, because Great Britain are playing Latvia away on Monday. It's a 5:30 UK time tip-off, and maybe as there's only 3 games, the 2 GBs and the random BBL game that's thrown in, we do it after the GB game, sort of 7:30, 8 o'clock.
I just hear a voice outside. That's my wife going. Because they like to make me feel important one day. That's the thing about having a family, innit? You get one. Some people make it too much.
So are we agreeing, Matt?
We are absolutely agreeing.
So, programming note, people, we will not be on next Sunday. We're bumping it to Monday after the Great Britain game in Riga. In
the meantime, however, we have been demonstrated to actually be, in our own minds, influencers.
Indeed.
Because the earth-shattering, bone-shattering news is, in fact, that they will be GB.
They will.
Under 16 teams, after all. It's earth-shattering because, well, I've no idea, because, of course, there's absolutely no reason for the never to beat one.
Yeah.
But who knows? In my slightly deluded, self-important mind, I like to think it's because of the relentless campaigning that which has flushed out from hitherto unknown individuals and committed them to doing something for fear of the pushback and the comments,
the wrath.
The wrath of the SMB. However, of course, it's probably already planned. But either way, that's good. That's good news. I did point out that I'm slightly disappointed that no one's actually said thank you to Coach Kapoulis for doing 3 years of basically unpaid work for GB, helping us qualify for Eurobasket. He's just obviously decided enough's enough, and Coach Murray's in, which is great because Garrett, I think he'll be really good as well. But I think a press release just saying thank you for your effort would have been nice. But who am I to say? It's not like I'm on the board.
Indeed, not for lack of trying. Right.
I think that bridge is
truly
somewhere in Crimea at the moment.
They've pulled up the ashes and set fire to the ashes. I think just to be sure that it's burned.
Crimean bridge. Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's good. We look forward to the game on Friday. Oh, he's not playing. That'd be tough, but. The one thing, the Latvia game, they're at home, they're really competitive, and you just hope that they can keep that going, even though World Cup qualification is basically impossible. Hope they can keep that going at home at the very least.
And the Serbian long list is pretty good.
Is it really?
The Serbian long list is pretty good. There was a few names on that you're thinking, well, I hope he pulls out.
Well, it'll be fun because, as I say, the one thing I don't have enough time to do is to get my head around, to be honest, all the Euro Cup games and the EuroLeague games you do. So these guys, and to be honest, I don't. But I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun.
So we will be back post Dave's birthday on Monday night. We'll do it after the GB game, so it might be a Tuesday morning listen for you. But have a great week and make sure next Sunday night you celebrate Dave's birthday. But for now, goodbye.
Have one on me, guys. Yeah.